This video is part 4 of my build of the E-2A Hawkeye of VAW-112 Golden Hawks in my 1968 USS Enterprise Project, the ship in 1-720, and all the Carrier Air Wing 9 aircraft in 1-72.
First thing I have to do is fill this gap here.
I'd surrounded the area to be filled with masking tape, then applied tester's putty to the area, and pressed and formed it into place and scraped away the excess.
I'm going to sand that down. I also want to sand where I touched it with the super glue. Fronts of these wings. I decided to glue this piece in now. The tail hook is loose in there, so I can kind of lift it, paint below it. It's going to be easier. I can get this seam really clean now. Starting with these engines, I'm going to paint the insides black. Aluminum non-buffing metalizer. I'm going to do this indentation. For the tail section back here, this section I showed on the reference, the steel non-buffing metalizer. Thought about how I want to go about painting this, and I think putting them on first is going to be the best way. I did mask a rectangle over these, and I masked the back. I'm just going to glue them in place and then deal with painting it white and gray after they're in place and mask them in place. Small gap there, and there's the tiniest of gaps right in there.
So I took the same approach as I did with that tail gap.
A very slight gap where this piece meets the fuselage.
All the pieces are now cleaned, and I'm going to start painting the first color. I airbrushed enamel insignia white FS17875 on the wheels, landing gear doors, the landing gear, the disc bottom, the fuselage and engine bottoms, and the horizontal control surfaces.
Landing gear is just in there, it's not glued in. I just wanted to double check and make sure I put enough weight in. It has plenty. Now I am going to mask the white. For these windows and these lights on the front, I think I'm going to try this micro mask, liquid masking medium, rather than try to get perfect circles.
I then cut and attached the final two antenna-like pieces on top of the engines with a tiny drop of medium super glue in the holes. I airbrushed enamel flat gold gray FS36440 on the disc and fuselage. I then airbrushed the propellers flat black and brushed that same color on all the tires as well.
As soon as the paint is dry to the touch, it may be removed either by lifting an edge or peeling it away, or by pressing adhesive tape and pulling it away. I'm going to start with the peeling it away method. Maybe I'll try the masking tape method. I may regret this. It kind of chips off as opposed to pulls off. Maybe I didn't put enough on, I don't know. Ah, there we go. Cool. Okay. Oh, that one came off real easy. Nice. Yeah. Alright, maybe I will use it again.
I unmasked the rest of the plane to reveal the general paint scheme. I want to do some detail painting, redo inside these intakes, try to get inside that intake as well as inside the intake on the side, the leading edges of these two intakes in the front, and I'll pop those reference photos in here. With my smallest brush, I very carefully blacked out the interiors of the side and top intakes I previously carved out.
Now inside these intakes, a little bit inside these back ones too.
I carefully hand painted the engine intake leading edges with the silver metalizer.
Now I have to do these sections
of bare metal on the wings above the exhaust.
Finish those metallic leading edges, retouch the black inside there, and then the same thing on the back. So for the color
of the edge of the disc,
it says here, outside circular edge, white
or cream color. And all my references in both the GRS video and the 68 Cruise book have it in white. I bought this Tamiya masking tape for curves, and I'm going to give that a try. I have to say, I'm pretty happy with it. We'll see. I'm going to go with the Parafilm M over this. While outer ring of the disc dries, I'm going to work on the red edges of the landing gear doors. And in the comments to part 2, a Darryl Dyke left a comment and said to give permanent marker a try. I'll give it a shot, see how it works. And my references, it's actually red on the outside of this piece, up to this line that's scribed in there. I may lay some red striped decal on that, just so I get a nice crisp straight line right up to that scribed line. That's the awesome thing about YouTube. I mean, this is what it's all about. This is why I show what I do, so that other people can learn, and I highly encourage comments and suggestions for precisely this reason. This is so much easier. So thank you, Darryl. Beautiful. What a time saver. Back with the disc, and I'm gonna unmask this. That tape works really nice. Next thing is the nose here. In checking references, I found that there's 2 structures on the nose that perhaps they're pitot tubes. They sure as heck look like pitot tubes. I'll pop the reference photos in here, and they look to be right about here and here. I hit the spares box, and I just so happen to have 2 pitot tube like structures that match the reference pretty nice. It looks like they're about like from here up. I mark their locations according to my references, then carefully place them after dipping them in thin superglue. For the black, I slowly work my way around the curve outline with the curved tape. Then I use Tamiya tape to mask the windows right where they meet the nose. Those pitot tubes look good. I really like that curvy tape. I'm gonna assemble the landing gear. Looking at references, the side with the circles on it goes on the outside. I'm just gonna touch some super thin super glue to the middle. That run down in there. One more thing is fit these in the corners. I attached these corner pieces with the Tamiya thin cement, and then I sanded the edges of the wings down to meet that. The tips of the wings and the tips of the rear vertical control surfaces are insignia blue. I wanted that to be a nice smooth surface on both sides, and I wanted this to meet up. Landing gear is next. I'm going to use thick super glue. The struts are on the outside, and the thick gives me a little time to work. I'm going to do the red stripe decal on the outside. It'll give me a nice straight line. The decal is dried, and now I'm going to fill in that space with marker. This larger Sharpie has a flatter edge. All right. The build is basically complete. I airbrushed Pledge Floor Wax, which is an acrylic clear coat, on the entire plane. Made sure there were no spots where it had built up. In those spots that it did, I just put some Windex on a Q-tip, and I just wiped it down until it went away, and then I just went and touched it again. Everything's ready for decals. I like to use stripe decal to get nice, clean, crisp lines. So for instance, on the propellers, I'm going to use a red stripe in the middle. For the black on the tips of the wings, I'll be using the black stripe decal. And then for the tips of the wings and the tips of the vertical tail control surfaces, I have this insignia blue solid film. Because I'm making a specific historical plane, there's no kit that represents this aircraft, so I have to kind of cobble together what I can. Here's the kit decal set. These are way out of scale. I'm gonna, cut a few of these and see if it's too yellow. yellow. Starfighter Decals makes the 1-700 Carrier Air Wing 9 set. I contacted them and asked if they could scale up to 1-72 some of the ones that I needed that I couldn't cobble together. For this plane, they made this set. However, this was wrong. Just another reminder, double check if you're building a historical subject, try to find the most accurate references you can. If these are no longer yellow, it'll give me the sides. I went out and purchased this set, which is for an E-2B. A lot of these are not to the proper scale according to my references, so I'll supplement those with these decals here. What I did for that tail is I actually traced these onto a piece of paper to make a template so I knew the exact size, and then scaled the reference on my computer so that would tell me the size of the NGs. Those are almost perfect. This 1705, I think that's pretty dang close. About this logo from the cruise book and reference photos confirm that this is the proper logo for the side of the plane. I scaled those down and printed those out on decal paper. They're basically the same size as those 704s and then up and to the side. So you can see right there. Two more useful decal sets are these Scalemaster SM15B and 15A, which are numbering and lettering for Navy Marine, as well as microscale decals, Navy style font, alphabet black and white. This is my test of these decals. It's going to tell me if they're going to disintegrate because they're old, and if they're yellowed. I wet this one and we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's disintegrating. Shit. So I am going to coat these with a liquid decal film and hope this solves this disintegration problem. After using the liquid decal film, they're either not coming off or they still break up. That's the bummer with these vintage kits. I'm going to start on these leading edges of the tail. Here's my references. I transferred the length required from the plane to the decal sheet, then cut, floated, and fit the strips within the scribed areas on the leading edges of the tail sections, both top and bottom. Then repeated the process on the wings. The tail hook came out exactly as I had hoped. This stripe decal are all connected, so you can cut an entire section like that and then lay that on, and it just wants to wrap around it. I'm gonna do the tail hook now with the steel. To do the insignia blue tips, I took a sticky pad and stuck it to the back of these and then traced it and then cut just above that trace mark so that there will be enough to kind of fold over the top. I cut out the stock decal using my templates, then fit and folded them over the tail fin tops, applying ample setting solution to basically melt them over the tops, then repeated the process on the wing tips. Working on the propellers, I painted the tips white. Now I'm laying the red stripe decal in the center. When I have to supplement with other kits, I went through all my spares and started collecting. For the insignias on the wings, I have these. For the sides, these, so what I will take from here is the BU numbers. So this has the E-2B, replace that B with an A from here. I need 151,705. This has 151,718. I can steal an 05 from up here. I also bought this E-2C set from eBay for a lot of the common markings, and it's providing the side navies. These navies, these are going to work. These USS Enterprises, that takes care of the ship name, the Navy, the insignia, the VAW, the CVW, the bureau numbers, the tail 1705, those for the wing. These 704s for the nose, that'll have a 704, vertically from here. The only thing I'm going to have to make is this walkway and print it out onto decal paper. I think I've got everything covered. It's a bummer that I can't use any of these, but I can still finish the model. I'm attempting to copy this to decal film. First step is cutting it out. I'm going to lay this on here, load the decal paper in here, decal side down, color start. That'll work. Let's start with the insignia on the wing. can see the USS Enterprise is not as wide as that Navy. I actually used the smaller one from this Scalemaster set for the CVW-9s and VAW-112s out of this set. And then there's the tail code kind of cobbled together from those two. This E-2C set has some really nice common markings and a lot more. That's a lot more than this E-2B set. As I go through this, for instance, in the tail here, and I go back and I look and I say, okay, yeah, that's a decal, those are decals. In here, those are decals. Now, some of them change. For instance, these rescues are very small. These are more accurate to references. Some of these are out of register. This is just a really nice set. Everything is crisp and clean and clear. And I'll double check references to make sure I'm not putting something on there that was added to the C but wasn't around during the A. I'll pop the references in here. This post right here should be black, as well as these two pieces here should be black. I'm going to do that now. I finished all the common markings. The last decal I have to do is this walkway. References show it on the outside of this support, and it needs to be centered between the two wing fold panel lines. And also this end needs to be before this rescue hatch, right about there. However, you can see it goes over this flap. So my only alternative is to notch the decal right there so that I can get it over. It should kind of be like that. I'm actually on my third attempt at this, believe it or not. It's so fragile, and I tore a little bit there, but this is the best I've been able to get it, so I'm kind of going with this. I'm hesitant to even put setting solution on it. I'm just going to let it dry, and then I'm going to come back with black stripe decal and clean up these lines. Just finished putting the black stripe decal all around this. Here's one of the ones from earlier that didn't work. I took some of this and tried to fill in here and there. When I weather it, hopefully it'll just look like it's scuffed. I'm done. It is what it is. What I did was took that decal off because this was really messed up, and I took the red microsol and then a bunch of Q-tips to, just keep working that off there, and I finally got it all off, cleaned it up, sanded it down a little bit, and then tape on the bottom of this, taped this in place, taped around that, and then painted inside that tape with Gunship Gray FS 36118 with a brush. And then once that dried, went back and hand sanded that with like a 7000 grit to get the brush strokes out of it. So now I'm ready to hit the whole thing with future floor wax. The last step will be to come back and surround with the black stripe decal. And all this is because Tim at Throttle Power posted that video of the model show and those exquisite airplanes, and it guilted me and I couldn't leave it the way it was. This still isn't perfect, but it's better than it was. I gave it another coat of acrylic clear coat. I also had these, so now all the decals are like sealed down. So the last thing I have to do is go around this walkway with the black stripe decal. I'm so glad that Tim from Throttle Power posted that video when he did, which basically shamed me into fixing this because it's way better and I'm much happier. Weathering is next. I'm going to start weathering now. What I use is the Tamiya panel line accent, and I have three colors. I have the black, dark gray, and plain gray. I'll use the black on the darker color, like the gray on the top, and either the dark gray or gray on the lighter colors, like the white on the bottom.
For any like moving panel lines, like the lines between, say, the flaps, so that's like a hinge, I'll use the black on that so that it kind of looks deeper. Plenty of Q-tips, wipe those off, and mineral spirits. While these have their own brush, it's like a medium-sized brush, but for sometimes when you want to get into just a really thin panel line and keep it thin, I have my thinnest brush. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And most of these panel lines are accompanied on either side by rivets, so I hit it a little wider because then it'll pool around those rivets, and when you go to wipe it off after it's dried a little bit, you know, it'll accent those rivets as well. You know, there's both recessed and raised detail on this, so anything that's either recessed or raised, I'm hitting it with this because it'll go down into the recessed lines and it'll pool around the raised detail. So I like to wring this out a little bit. What I want to do is wipe it off in the dirt, you know, in a back and forth direction so it'll look windswept. You're going to go through a zillion of these, so go out and buy a new box. That's the first wing on the bottom. Basically all you're doing is just trying to bring out the detail a little bit. Now I'm going to go back over those deeper ones, which are moving panel lines, so to speak, with the black. Now I'm coming back with my very thin brush to just get inside those deep panel lines with the black. And I'm trying to let capillary action do as much of the work as I can. The bottom of the main wing is pretty much done. The bottom is pretty much done. For the fuselage, the rear wings, I've been using, as opposed to the dark gray, just the regular gray. It's a little lighter. I finished the top, did the black between the flaps, as well as the seam at the folds back here on the control surfaces. I did the gray everywhere else. I think the weathering is pretty much complete. I also did it along the sides. And again on the bottom. The last step is to coat the entire plane with dull coat. I obviously want to keep the windows shiny and clear, so I have to mask those, and I'm going to use the Parafilm M to do that. I sprayed the entire plane, disc and doors, with Tester's dull coat to remove the ultra shininess of the acrylic gloss coat and render the final surface. The dull coat is dry to the touch. I'm going to pull these masks off. Last parts to put on are the landing gear doors. I'm going to use the thin super glue. And this outer one has a decal up in the corner here. I cut and placed tiny balls of sticky tack inside the propellers and pressed them into place on the engines. Done.
it sits on the shelf along with its shipmates and the ship itself. And as a matter of fact, I will mark it done.
This video is already running way too long. I hate videos that go over a half hour. So I will do these next and do a separate video on the 1 to 700s, 1 to 720s. Just a preview. So here are the teeny tiny decals from Starfighter Decals. I have photo etch landing gear, propellers, gear doors. I have two different sets. I have the gold medal models set for the E-2 Hawkeye here, and this is a flagship models set. So this will be my next video, and I'll try to knock it out in no more than a couple of weeks, a week or two tops.
Thanks for watching, and as always, happy modeling.